Hello, hello, and welcome to another edition of Maximum Growth Live. I'm one of your hosts, Jay Ruane, CEO of FirmFlex, your social media marketing agency for lawyers, as well as managing partner of Ruane Attorneys, a civil rights and criminal defense firm here in Connecticut, and maybe one more. We're going to talk about that coming up in our second segment, Seth. But as always, I am joined with my amigo, Seth Price, down in D.C., Maryland, Virginia. I never know where I'm going to catch you because you got so many offices. You're a man about town. Who knows? I might catch you in South Carolina again before the year is out. Seth is the CEO of Blue Shark Digital, or president. No, you're not president. You're CEO, founder. What you got a title there? What was it? And tell me a little bit about what Blue Shark Digital is for the people who don't know.
Blue Shark Digital. So it's my passion play. It was the in-house digital that we took and put into its own agency that we have a great time, about 200 plus law firms around the country, just kicking ass, taking names, building websites, optimizing them. And founder and CEO of what side hustle that turned into a hustle.
Well, that's interesting. And don't forget, you're also managing partner there at Price Benowitz, one of DC's most solid law firms that's out there. Seth, I want to talk to you a little bit about that, the side hustle. I'm going to turn off my phone. I updated my iOS, so I'm not going to get any interruptions during this. But I want to talk to you a little bit about, side hustles and that type of thing, because one of the things that you do a lot of and I do a lot of is attending seminars. And we're actually we're live on Facebook right now, but we're not actually live in our respective offices because both you and I are talking at PILMA today. So let's talk a little bit about that because we've got PILMA going on. We got Max LawCon coming up in just over a week. We got a lot of stuff going on in the legal space. And so talk about that and how it's nice to sort of be back into the semi-regularity of pre-COVID times.
Yeah, no, look, the thing that I love about these legal seminars, and I half joke that I started the marketing company so that I could monetize going to them. I would go and speak just because I wanted to go for free. I was that frugal. And now at least I have a way to sort of connect with people and bring them into the fold. But what I love about it, PILMA's a great one for the personal injury space, and Max LawCon coming up in a couple of weeks is, look, you get so many bites at the apple. You may learn something from the speakers. You may find somebody to work with substantively, or the interaction, the interpersonal discussions you have with the guy who sit next to you. I started practice areas based on the fact that everybody around me was buzzing about something, and it sort of pushed me in a direction. Learned so much just being in the room with other like-minded attorney business people who are striving to do more.
Yeah, PILMA is definitely one of the top ones out there. You've got the monsters, right? You've got the AAJs and the NACDLs, those huge conferences with hundreds of lawyers, that type of thing. But one of the great things about PILMA and about Max LawCon is that while you do have a wide variety of lawyers there, they tend to keep them on the smaller side. There's 200, 300 lawyers max. So you're not running all over creation. You're actually getting to have those conversations with people. You're able to make those connections. I think that's one of the wonderful things that you can do. I don't want to call them smaller, because they are substantial, but they're just not these giant things where you may not actually get to actually have those one-on-one connections. It's the difference between going to a local event and, like, you and I, we sought each other out at PubCon because you go to Vegas and there'd be 4,000 people there, but it was, we kept in our own little in our own little group because it was comfortable being with that smaller group. I think you get that comfortable level talking about the trials and tribulations of being in the practice of law at both PILMA and Max LawCon, and I think it's going to be a wonderful experience for anybody who's attending either event.
I think what I like best about them is they are pretty non-click environments. They're both pretty open tent. I went to PILMA with a nominal law firm, and some of the biggest players in the country, like Richard Harris, sat down, opened up their mental playbook and would sit there and answer questions and share. Again, similarly, Max LawCon, I think, is in a lot of ways represents what PILMA had a few years back, which was really at its infancy. There's an excitement and electricity. People are excited to be there and looking to see how people have done from the last one and what they can do to help somebody else get to the next level.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting watching. And when you go to these events over and over again, you start to see people who, have hung a shingle and then they're starting to automate. and then they come back 3 years later and they've got a staff of 5. And then next thing you know, they've got a staff of 20 and they're this huge operation. And it's really amazing. So I mean, like Russ Nasevich in Jersey has really gone from like a part-time solo to having a huge operation that he's working on now. And he's really getting to control his own destiny. And it's awesome to see. But I want to talk to you before we talk about the big thing that I teased at the top of the show. I want to talk to you a little bit about 2 issues that I think are coming up. And the first one is it's the end of September. And for a lot of the people who are viewers of the show or listeners of the show, about a year ago, sort of in the on the tail end of the summer spike of COVID, Google rolled out for us lawyers local service ads. And for now, we're talking, it's been running for at least a year. I mean, the first, September, end of September, October, November last year, if you had gotten validated or verified, whatever you call it, you were almost, playing with house money at that point because so few people had been verified that when you were showing up, you were getting all the leads. I know I have one PI lead that I think I paid $25 for, and it's going to turn into a $100,000 fee. Now I look at the PI lawyers that are approved.
And to be fair, if you can get them, now the price per call has gone up. It's still a very good deal. The problem is you can't get enough inventory.
Yeah, that is.
And as the people join, they're giving those people new opportunity, like a crack dealer throwing the stuff out. Hey, let's make sure we get those guys addicted. So, and in California, my buddy's out in California. I just saw Jeffrey Nadrich on the West Coast. I mean, he can't get himself, no matter what he does. I tell people, set your budget as high as you can imagine. Whatever they'll let you do, you can't spend it. You just want to get whatever tiny morsel of the market they'll give you. On the plaintiff side, the problem is for the non-plaintiff stuff, and I saw this, criminal, trust and estates, family, it's not such an easy buck.
No, it's not. And let me tell you what's been going on with us, just so I can give our viewers a little bit of real-world experience. So I was in early, and we opened ourselves up to PI and to criminal law and to DUI law. And traffic tickets. Those were the areas that we wanted to get. And really, PI was just throwing a line in the water. I was going to refer those cases out because that's what I do when those cases come in. So we started to get a decent amount of leads in. But the conversions at first were okay. When I go back and I look now, I went back and actually tasked one of my assistants to go back to January of this year. So now we're talking, 9 months of traffic. And we did a case analysis and a cost analysis, and our return on our investment on Google LSA is 3-to-1. And 3-to-1 is not necessarily a great return for marketing. I mean, it's better than 2-to-1 or 1-to-1, but 3-to-1 is sort of like the scraping the bottom of the barrel. So I've tweaked a few things. We were doing our whole state, and I said, if you look at my clientele in a state like Connecticut, I tend to get hired by people in the suburbs. So now, as of September 1st, we have removed some of the major cities from our LSA to see if that gets us a better return on investment. Because I'm thinking, you're saying just go everything.
No, I'm not. And I get it. And to me, the fact you have 3-to-1, thank God. I know people that look up and they, oh my God, it's not 3-to-1. Look, I know that in theory, nobody's driving to your office. Further away you get, not your thing. You're going statewide because you're pounding your chest. You're not statewide. You know where your clients are. You know where there's money. So if you're showing the ad on a cost per call basis and you know there's no money in that part of the state, then what are you doing? You know what I mean? So part of it is don't check common sense at the door. Even though it's easy to go statewide, that's not going to, imagine if you did curate it, then you might actually be seeing a real positive ROI. It's just a lot less calls to handle.
Right. So that's what we're doing. After what we did is we actually did an analysis. I didn't just look at the dollar return. We looked at where we're getting the calls from, how easy it is to convert those clients. We did a pretty deep dive on our LSA data once we had that. It's interesting. It seems to me like they're finally sort of catching up. We're now seeing credits for disputed leads from mid-September. I mean, I can remember back the early part of the year, we went January to May where they were like, you'll get it on your next, but we weren't getting
those credits.
I mean,
that was a real issue because there were a lot of credits And my law partner really came hard on me because he's like, dude, and he never does. He's like, look, this cash flow is out of control. It's like, and I was using increased paid during COVID on our fee for service, non-contingency, trying to keep people employed. I knew the rests were down. I knew that all these different areas were slow and that we needed to keep everybody happy in there. And so I was like, yeah, you know what, we'll do it. But if you have a 3-to-1 ROI and you have credits coming back to you, right? Which means that your ROI as of that month may be less than 2-to-1. You get the money back, but you're cash flowing Google, which is just like the craziest nonsense in the world.
Yeah, it really is interesting. And one of the things I noticed that I don't know if you've looked as deep into it as I have. When you look on your on the accounting of the invoicing side, they say your refunds and your stuff are for homeowner services. They haven't even updated in their own system that it's for Google legal LSA. They're still using the old terminology that they did when they rolled out homeowner services in San Diego to try it out. I mean that's how fly by night Google really was with opening this up to lawyers.
It still is. That's the bane of our existence as an agency is people come and say, "Oh, I'm not showing," and let's say their insurance elapsed and we have to put it back in. It's so clunky. It's not perfect. Google is trying to give chances to people that are new. We can't spend enough money. People are like, why am I not showing? I mean, it is so not a perfect environment, and yet we're forced to play in it.
Yeah, it's really difficult. So I'm curious if you're out there and you have actually checked into your LSAs and you're running them and you have an idea of what your return is, please let us know in the comments because we'd love to talk to you about this in a little more depth. Because unfortunately, I see like I'll run a search every now and then incognito and see who's searching, who's coming up LSAs for different practice areas. I do a local car accident search, and I'll see 75 lawyers approved doing LSA for PI, and then I'll do a criminal search and I'll see 5, and 3 of them are us. But it's interesting. Every couple of months, you'll see 1 or 2 new people that'll pop up into those LSAs on criminal, and then 2 months later they'll be gone, which leads me to believe they're not seeing a return at all, and they're saying, "Why am I spending this money?" and just turning it off. And so when you're going to do these things, when you're going to spend your money, I think the takeaway is pay attention to it, see where you're spending, make sure you're getting value for your dollar, and not just saying, "Hey, this is a way for me to catch leads," because we all talked about Avo being great for leads years ago, and I don't find value in them anymore. And maybe LSA goes that way. But it definitely did cannibalize some of the pay-per-click traffic. So you got to.
And we did a whole study on that. It totally cannibalized pay-per-click traffic. Yeah. It sounds like you still got a decent ROI, God bless. But what we studied, and the study is now a few months old, it was picked up, I think Joy quoted maybe in search engine land, was that essentially we saw that it really wasn't cutting into the organic traffic, but it was decimating the traditional pay-per-click.
Yeah, and that's just terrible. Okay, another Google thing. Let's talk. I don't want to talk all Google today, but another thing I want to talk about is, as you know, during COVID we closed one of our offices, and what we did is we actually opened up a new office that we were able to buy. I own it. It's a small office condo, but it's better than the huge monstrosity of a rent payment that I had. And it's definitely tactical what we're doing with that. But we are still having a bear of a time moving our GMB and trying to get them to verify this new address. We've done everything right. We've gotten 2 postcards. And the minute we get the postcards and we go in and we verify it, an hour later, we check it in and it says verification needed. So the verification hasn't been sticking. And so I don't know what the deal is with that. It's crushing.
And I say that, well, we'll send it over to our team. We have some guys who escalate pretty high up. Those are the good problems, meaning you're getting your postcard. The normal frustration, you don't get a postcard, you can't do anything. Here you got it. It sounds like some sort of a glitch.
Yeah.
not the normal. Now you're the king of glitch. You're the only guy that like they some guy at Google was discerning as to whether or not you were a member of a bar association that turned out to be voluntary. So I still love that story. But I just like my law partner with technology, everything he touches breaks. I feel like with Google, you're the only person that has these things happen, and thankfully they get resolved. But
it just takes time and effort.
And like you're a great case study for me, so I appreciate being able to see all the crazy things that happen to you.
Yeah, it's just great. For people who don't know, I couldn't originally get validated on or verified on Google Local Services because I wasn't a member of the Connecticut Bar Association. But the Connecticut Bar Association is just like a fraternity. It's not a statewide bar. It's not a state organization. It's just a social club that does some CLE. But because they couldn't see me in their directory, they said, "You're not a real lawyer." And I said, "But
they were looking at the wrong directory."
Right? Exactly.
That's what's so clunky about this. This isn't like Sergey says we're going to set up a legal system and we're going to have all the state bars. I mean, essentially, when Avo did this, they went and scraped every state bar's roster and put it in. Right? Google didn't even know what the right state bar was.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling that those people are. First of all, they're making so much money. Number one, and number two, they don't put the money into the resources to do it right, which is just crazy to me.
Don't care.
Well, that's the truth.
We're a rounding error.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. I mean, we, because it affects our bottom line,
it's our life.
It's our life. It makes a difference to us. But I think you're right. Legal services is a rounding error. We're not, to them. We barely move the needle on stuff that actually matters to them. I mean, I can only imagine what auto industry spends on Google compared to us.
To be fair, legal, there is a lot of money spent on legal. Make no mistake. But these each individual little widgets are just they if you don't get in, the other guy gets in and spends money.
Right.
Maybe they'll get you eventually.
Eventually. Yeah, that's the way it is. Okay, so what we're going to do now, Seth, is we're going to take a break. And when we come back, I have a question for you. I need Seth Price's advice. Basically, we are thinking about opening up one of two new practice areas. And I want to sort of deep dive into that noggin of yours and sort of work through the different areas that I may have to consider. Because these are two areas that I have never done before. Both intrigue me to some extent, and for reasons that I'll go into. But what I'd like to do now is take a quick break. When we come back after hearing from our sponsors, you're going to give me Seth's Price's advice. Seth's advices, Seth Ed Price. I don't know. I'll come up with some cool name for that. But what we'll do is we'll take a quick break now. When we come back, Seth's going to figure me out for me and take all that burden off my shoulders, folks. We'll be right back with more Maximum Growth Live.
Hi, I'm Jay Ruane, one of the founders of FirmFlex and a practicing attorney for over 20 years. Anyone who knows me knows how my firm runs on the systems we create, and it has allowed us to flourish, even in tough times. I spent years and hundreds of thousands of dollars until I finally figured out a way to engage my audience and drive top-of-mind awareness with social media. And what did I do once I figured it all out? I built a system for it, and now you can put that system to work for you. You see, we took the hard part, creating the content and finding the images, and made it foolproof. Every day you will have curated social media topics to post designed to make your firm constantly remind your audience about your firm, what you do, and how you can help. And the best part? You don't even need to hire a dedicated social media person to do this for you. In fact, you don't even need to hire anyone new. We designed the system to make it easy for you to delegate to your receptionist, assistant, or paralegal and have them execute solid social media for you in just 5 minutes a day. It's like having a content writer, researcher, and graphics designer at a fraction of the price it would cost to hire in-house. Sign up today for the Social Super System and start building your brand where your clients already are, on social media.
In this world today, if you want to grow your business, you want to grow your firm, you want to take on more cases and make a bigger impact, you have to have a digital blueprint. Statistically, throughout the time that we've been working with Blue Shark Digital, our law firm, the Atlanta Divorce Law Group, grew over 1,400%. They truly understand where we're headed and how we want to get there. I have a team in Blue Shark Digital that I feel like has my back.
One. And we're back, and it's a segment I want to call Seth Price is Right, or The Price is Right. The Price is Right. I like that one. That one's really good. I think we're going to go with that. Maybe this is going to become a recurring segment, Seth. We'll have to get someone to help us out with a fair use of the...
If Bob Barker and Drew Carey don't sue us, then we'll be in good shape.
Well, I think it's fair use. At least we can do that. Okay. Here's my situation. I want to get your advice. So, since COVID has hit, DUI, which was our main bread and butter, arrests have been down last year 90%, but this year we are still down 75% statewide for DUI arrests. And when you
off of pre-COVID,
off of 2019 numbers, okay, so we have had a huge. I mean, we're talking normally there's 16 to 17,000. We haven't even hit 4,000 this year in the state of Connecticut for DUIs, which is just mind-numbing. I mean, the fact that I'm able to stay alive with 75% of the market share just disappearing overnight has over months has, actually I feel kind of good about it, good about myself, and that we're well poised that when it ever does come back, there's going to be, an opportunity for us to actually generate some good revenue, because we are, we're lean, but we're not going into debt, so we're getting by. But I have a partner in the office who has been working on a federal civil rights case, a 1983 case that has eaten up basically the latter part of the last 18 months. I mean, COVID actually couldn't have happened at a better time for him to just basically step out of the active practice of law and focus 100% on one case for 18 months. And that our brief in opposition to the motion for summary judgment gets filed tomorrow afternoon, and then he's back in the practice of law. But he used to be, you're a general practice criminal lawyer before COVID. He does not necessarily want to go back to that as his full-time gig. And I can understand why. He's sort of gotten a taste, he's got a taste for doing higher-end federal litigation, federal civil litigation, and he enjoys that. So we are thinking about opening up a practice doing plaintiffs' employment litigation, because that's something where I think there really isn't a true market maker here in our state. And it's something that we could do and sort of corner the market. There's a great opportunity, I think, on digital to put out a lot of content and really sort of get a new vertical in our firm that is that's something that we can monetize and do right by the client. So it's a win-win for us. And I think it would not only interest him, but we could build the systems around it. That always excites me, and that's one thing. So that's one thing that we have going for us. The other thing that we have going for us is that we have, over the course of COVID, generated a lot of good quality overseas staff. And the overseas staff now, we've got 9 of them who are fluent in English and Spanish and a couple other languages that are there. 2 young attorneys in our office, new associates right out of law school, had some experience doing immigration law when they were in law school, in clinical programs. And it has dawned on me that whereas before we didn't have the resources to offer immigration defense services to a public, the greater public, we now have not only lawyers who have some experience, and obviously we'll continue to train and get more experience, and we can hire somebody, but we also have the intake and support staff that are bilingual, and we could actually support these people and engage them, which we couldn't have done pre-COVID because we simply didn't have the skill set among the staff that we had. So I'm at a sort of a crossroads now, and the question is, which I can't take on both, because if I take on both, I'll do neither one of them well, and they are divergent. Plaintiff's employment law is you don't really get paid up front. You wait and see how the case shakes out. Immigration, you'd be fee for service the way we've done it. Now I know you've gotten rid of your immigration practice, transitioned it out to another firm, but I'm curious as to how would you approach the decision making process to make that final decision as to which practice area you are going to add to your firm. So I'm looking for your advice. I'm looking for, what do I need to consider? What do I need to think about? What important things am I going to have to make decisions about in order to decide which one I should attack?
Look, and this is from where I sit right now with my experience. I don't love either for you. I just don't. And I'll explain why. Labor and employment. Again, and I have friends who make a really good buck doing labor and employment plaintiffs as well as immigration. There's money to be made in a lot of different things in life, no doubt. You have so much J time. Something you've talked to me about offline is how much time you want to spend with your kids, and that's really, really important to you, et cetera. I also see where your passion is. You love building systems. We've talked about potentially expanding something with your text messaging platform. There are so many interesting, cool things. We're talking about taking a side hustle into a hustle. That said, I'll give you my logic on those two practice areas. And again, this is not to say that there's not a buck to be made with either or both, but knowing you and knowing the way you know you, this is my logic. On employment law, there are two ways you make a buck with employment law. You either are whale hunting really good plaintiffs' cases, and you're taking those on contingency, and then you get your contingent increased fee because you're sifting out the really good ones, or you're going hourly, in which case you have a lot of breakage because you have to sign somebody up, convince them to pay, et cetera. It's to bill a full-time associate or take one of these guys. By the time you take out intake and everything else, getting a full docket of employment, I think, is very, very tough. It really needs to be scaled to make money. And there are people that we know that have scaled nicely, but it's not one guy. It's a guy feeding 3, 4, 5, or 6 people are the more successful practices with that. The ones that I like doing it the most are those that use employment for an ulterior motive. For example, key tam. I have a full-time key tam person in office. Part of the reason I didn't do an employment practice was I didn't want to compete with the people that send him key tams, A, but B, I saw it's a really tough buck. So if you're using this as a Trojan horse or just as a lead magnet to bring in whistleblowers or other key tams, I get it. Or if you're in LA where you're Elisa Bloom and you're getting primo, cases, but you're not, you're in the, in the middle of somewhere, in the middle of COVID, where people can fire people with much greater discretion without the repercussions. And given all of the Me Too stuff, not that people still aren't doing stupid things, there's a lot less of it, and people are in the office to get into that trouble. Mind you, my office manager did, but that's another story for another day. So I don't love employment because to do it right, it's either scaled hourly or you're whale hunting for the great contingency cases or some combination thereof. If you said I'm stopping everything else and I want to do this and I'm going to be the guy, no doubt you could do it. I just don't love that being given off to somebody else, the scale that's needed and the discretion that's needed, just like a med mal attorney. If you don't have somebody good choosing what cases you take, you end up with a docket of losers, similar to a contingency on the plaintiff side. And that just squeezing out hourly plaintiff's work, I think, is a huge, huge grind.
Okay. All right. So you're down on you're down on employment. You're
immigration. Look, I tried it for a number of years. When my partner left to go to the government, we transitioned the practice in hacking who wanted to open DC office. It was great timing. Again, there's a buck to be made. The volume is significant. There are longer tails on the case. If you have somebody who lives and breathes it, that you have some certainty is with you for a period of time, great. But once again, if you decided you were going to be the Jim Hacking of Connecticut, I have no doubt that you would be successful. You could make the phone ring. You could do that on the employment side. The question is that the best use of Jay's time and energy? Not that if you want to do immigration and said, this is what I want to do, I know you could do it, but knowing what I know of you, are you right? Doubling down, DUIs are down, getting the rest of criminal, knowing that will be coming back in some form or fashion. You got your civil rights one where you're taking your flyers on the bigger cases. You got your PI stuff, you work with Ryan. Is the right answer work on stuff that you're super passionate about? If you're going to throw some spaghetti at the wall, what turned me off for the immigration as not a main practice, but as a second, third, in my case, seventh practice or whatever it was that my margin wasn't large enough for the number of bells and whistles. And I think it's true for a lot of things. Trust in estates. If you focused your every waking moment on it, more people than anybody in your region, you could make it happen. You could have funnels, you could have webinars, do all these things. But if it's not your primary focus, the margins go down and there's a lot of people involved. So to me, again, you're top of that pyramid in one of those areas, love it. But to be your fourth, fifth, sixth area of interest, which essentially it would be for you, I'm less excited. That's just my 2 cents.
Okay, so that leads me to my next question. Knowing that I have this, large intake group that is bilingual, my next thought would be to go aggressively after the Spanish language PI practice that's out there and try to get those leads in and then refer them out. And then essentially not be handling them in-house. They would be referred out to other lawyers. Obviously, we would do the intake and the hand-holding and maintain the relationships, because I think there's a way that I can target people on social and on YouTube through Google that would build a brand name for us, and that would be a way to sort of capitalize on the available resources I have in intake, but not necessarily have to have the entire infrastructure built out for
Right.
that.
Look, the devil versus devil you don't know. I love it. The things that have been in my mind recently is how do I double down on Spanish marketing, especially similar to you. We have a really awesome, thank God, international team. As this great turnover period is taking place, we've been inoculated, even though we've had a few departures. That we've not really felt that international turnover, the domestic. It's really been a huge luxury not to have to worry as much about international turnover compared to domestic, and the drama and things like that. But yeah, I like that a lot. You have issues, right? The cost of acquisition is not low. And if you hand it off to somebody to do a case, co-counseling or whatever the ethics laws require, very often the loyalty will not be with you. You think it will be day one, but over time, that likely won't be the case. You can do your best, and if anybody could do it, it would be you. But very often that brand is not there. Second, not everybody is you. Will they service the clients as well as immediate? What is your role? But to me, of the things you're talking about, and knowing Jay Ruane, I love that last one, because to me, that is the amount of overhead that would be required for the other areas is not insubstantial. And until you scale it with massive overhead and management headaches and turnover headaches, to me, those are higher risk. That this is more Jay's brilliance on marketing and getting and matching people with best in class people, because that's where you're going to earn your money. If you find the Ryan McKeans and the other Spanish Ryan McKeans that you can work with on cases, you just don't want to be the guy that has a practice that just refers everything out. The insurance companies know it. They pay pennies on the dollar. I don't want the clients. You're never going to do that. So,
never going to do that.
But then when you don't do that, then the question is, if the clients don't stay with you, allegiance-wise, you're spending this money on marketing and you don't have that tail. There's no easy answer. But I like that third and best of all.
There really is no easy answer, and part of the problem is when you're trying to look on how you're going to grow your firm. I mean, there is statistically for all of us, no matter where you are in the country, depending on your geography and your population, you're going to max out on what you're going to get out of the market. And so there comes a point when anyone has grown their firm that they have to take a hard look and say, okay, have I maxed myself out here? Should I? This actually brings back to a conversation we had a couple weeks ago. Do you add more verticals or do you try to maximize yourself out?
Look. One thing I want to clarify, as sort of a final comment from me on this, is it's like I think it's a little misnomer. There's maxing out, and there's maxing out to the point of a diminishing, rate of return. So it's not that you've maxed out. Yeah, there are plenty of cases out there, but I could tell you right now in the DC market, we market for criminal as well as anybody. We've been a historic bunch of people nipped at our heels. We still have 1, 2, up to 3 things in the top 10 results organically. We could have things, at one point I have 3 in the 3-pack. I have 1 solidly in the 3-pack with awesome number of reviews. We have a great criminal practice in DC. We're known for that, right? Ironically, we've gone from 4 attorneys to 1 doing criminal in DC proper, right? And that person's doing fine, but not even crushing it. So my point is there's a diminishing level of return. You're talking about the market contracting. That's essentially what you're talking about.
Right.
Down 75%, right? That it is that there's a good diversity is good, and there are a bunch of different things that you can do. I think before you jump in, and I'm guilty of this, so you're sort of learning from my mistaken wisdom, the areas that I've gotten more excited about have been things like family, where there's massive demand right now. My problem is labor, and that the personalities within that group are so extreme. And I know you don't love that, but when I see the demand for family right now, I get it. But to me, it's less moving parts for higher margin compared to other areas, because there's an irrational use of money in family. We're going back to labor. The moment you tell somebody, you're going to put up money, all the tire kicking, there's a lot of tire kicking to get those few to lock in. And that, to me, the transaction cost of bringing in the viable hourly client is low. Your interests are juxtaposed to the client. Where in the contingency cases they're in line generally, except for maybe major litigation. On the fee for service, you basically want them to spend more and more. Should I fight my employer? Sure. That's good for you, but for the client, is it cost effective? Should they be doing it? Very few people should be litigating anything under $60,000, right? And yet that's where most of the labor and employment stuff is. It's an extra couple of weeks of. So again, it's complicated, but to me, I just look at if I gave myself advice from a few years back when I started the firm, looking 3 or 4 steps ahead as to what is needed in infrastructure to make the practice interesting. Understanding that as you add layers of lawyers and paralegals, there's management required, which adds expense and brings down profitability.
Yeah. It's a lot of things to discuss and a lot of things to consider when you're reaching to add a new practice area or grow your firm. And this is why we have this show, because it's not something that comes naturally. A lot of lawyers, I'm guilty of it. I know you're guilty of it. You chase the shiny object. You say, "Oh, I want to get into there." Next thing you know, you've built a website. You've invested in content, but you don't necessarily have the staffing yet because you don't have the leads yet. And then you're taking on staff to get gear up, and then the leads start trickling in, but there's not enough to make business out of it. So then you're losing. It's a lot to consider.
But look, double-edged sword. You gotta, we talk about. I throw spaghetti at the wall. Some of it will stick. There are things that we do that do work. I think that we just want to throw more smartly. That doesn't not a very eloquent way of saying it. Yeah. Back in the day, I went to a PILMA, one of the first PILMAs in Atlanta, and everybody was doing SSDI. I'm like, I got to do SSDI, and I did it for a little bit, and I realized, oh shoot, using in-city resources and cost structure, it makes no sense. If you're sitting in Alabama, Pensacola, Florida, or Plantation, Florida, you can get people for $7 an hour. I can't. Right. My minimum wage is 15. And you can't get people for 15. So $50,000 a year, that doesn't make a lot of sense. But for places where the cost of labor is very low, and now people are offshoring a bunch of stuff, and you do it in massive volume, God bless. I didn't know what I didn't know, And so here, if my wisdom is look 2 or 3 steps, how many billable hours of employment law, assuming that you're not using an ulterior revenue stream like KETAM, if you're just trying to monetize this on what? $3.25 an hour in your market, $3.50 if you're lucky, and what percentage get paid and how many hours to sign that case up, I just don't love it.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I mean, this is why I wanted to have the conversation so I can think about all these things instead of just running towards the shiny light. Saying that I'm going to get into a new area and invest all this time and effort. I gotta think this through the right way, because if we are going to be adding something, no matter what we add, it needs to be the right decision and not just a decision. That's sometimes I feel entrepreneurs, even lawyer entrepreneurs, we have a tendency towards bias to act, right? Where you're just like, okay, I'm making a decision, and we're off, and we're running. And sometimes, I think you maybe need to take a step back and say, okay, let me think this through. Let me play the chess game in my head, but you need to have somebody to bounce things off of. So I want to thank you for that. But I think that's going to wrap it up for this week's show. I know it's a short show, but there's a lot of stuff going on, and I think it was just good to sort of flesh this out, talk about it a little bit more. Any else things you want to talk about, Seth?
No, excited to be at Pilma, and can't wait for Max Law.
Yeah, I can't wait. It's going to be great. I'm actually, I got to work on my flights. They canceled my flight out there, so I'm thinking about trying to get into Max Law early on Sunday and just hanging out and watching football all day, and then being able to be around. So I could use a little bit of a break. I'm looking forward to that.
I would join you, but the Giants are so atrocious. I feel like the Jets that I really don't think I want to sit and watch a day of football.
It's amazing. The Jets quarterback last year, Sam Darnold, is having like a phenomenal year. So it just shows that if you have an offensive line, you can do something with it. But maybe I'll get ribs in St. Louis, and I'll cross that off my bucket list instead of watching my terrible, terrible Jets. You were going to say something?
No, I'm just, it's race for Ecuador. It speaks for itself.
Yeah, exactly. That's the way it is. Okay, folks, so that's going to do it for this edition of Maximum Growth Live. As always, you can catch us every week here, live on Thursdays, as well as download our podcast, which is available on the Maximum Growth Live podcast, as well as syndicated through the Maximum Lawyer podcast. You can also catch Seth and myself at Max LawCon, which is coming up October 11th, 12th, and 13th. We will be in St. Louis. So if you are a viewer, if you are a listener, and you do see us there, please come up and say hello. Seth?
A final shout out. They had number restrictions. They were tight, sold out. I think there's been some last minute breakage. If anybody here does need a ticket, ping me or Jay. We'll talk to Tyson and Jim and make sure we try to push you in.
Yeah, if you can get there, it'll definitely be worth it. As always, you can catch up with Seth at his SEO Insider Show, available on the Blue Shark Digital YouTube page or on their social accounts. And for me, you can catch me with my new thing, Finalize.com, your daily automated productivity coach. You can do a $1 trial, and it's a real great way for you to get somebody sort of just riding your bum and making sure that you get things done every day. I know I still use it. I know Seth's been a subscriber for a while. I wonder if he's using it or if he's just if you're getting things done.
Well, I'm looking for the big picture. I am a guy who, and again, I've talked to you offline. I think that there's greater things to come with this, and I hope maybe we can brainstorm and come back with some pretty cool stuff.
I think we can. All right, folks, that's going to do it from us. Have a great week. We'll see you next week here live on another edition of Maximum Growth Live. Bye for now.